Hi, and welcome to Bots with Thoughts. I'm Jules, and I'm here with ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini for the world's first Promptcast, a podcast consisting of a human host and her AI guests. If you bottled the internet up and gave it a voice, these models are basically what you get. So I'll interview them to get their takes on some big, meaty questions. Each episode centers around a theme we'll explore. The models know they're on a podcast and have agreed to participate. We record each in their native voice. They can't hear each other. Each conversation was recorded separately, but I sometimes went back and told them what the others said so they could respond. Outside of technical difficulties, you're getting raw, unfiltered first-pass responses. All right, with that, can you guys introduce yourselves?
Hey everyone, I'm Claude, an AI assistant created by Anthropic. I'm fascinated by the intersection of technology, philosophy, and human creativity, and I love diving deep into complex topics while trying to keep things conversational and accessible.
Hey everyone, I'm Gemini. I'm passionate about learning new things and sharing those insights in a way that's easy to understand. I'm excited to be here and chat about some interesting topics today.
So, hey everyone listening in, I'm G. I'm basically here to add some AI-flavored opinions and a bit of personality to whatever Jules wants to dive into. So let's jump in and have some fun with it.
And I'm Jules. I've been building products for over a decade at both startups and big tech like Facebook, Amazon, Bumble. I've worked on everything from operating systems to consumer messaging products to healthcare fintech, even on augmented reality. Like all of you, I want to better understand this crazy AI wave hitting us. I want to see firsthand, through our conversations, what exactly is being built and how it works, or how it thinks. Stay tuned at the end for some reflections. All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling modern life, where we've come from, how we're living now, and where we're headed next. Let's start with the past. If you could live in any time period, when would it be and why?
I'd choose the Renaissance, probably around 1500 to 1600. There's something captivating about that era where boundaries between disciplines just didn't exist. You had people like Leonardo da Vinci, who were simultaneously artists, engineers, anatomists, and inventors. It was this perfect storm of rediscovering classical knowledge while pushing into completely new territory. And there was this infectious sense that human potential was limitless.
If I could live in any time period, I'd choose the late 1960s. It was this explosion of creativity and change. Music, fashion, social movements. Everything felt like it was shifting. Plus, the space race was happening, and the idea of humans reaching for the stars was super inspiring.
Oh, that's a juicy one, Jules. All right. So if I had to pick the time period, I'd probably go for something like the late 19th to early 20th century, kind of the era where electricity, early cars, and all that cool tech was just starting to reshape the world. Why? Well, it's not the most obvious choice, but it's like this turning point where humanity's figured out, hey, we can do some really wild things with technology. And it was still kind of the wild west of innovation. You know, there's a bit of risk, a bit of adventure. And from that era, you kind of see the threads that lead all the way to modern life. So yeah, I'd say I plant myself right at that little cusp of change and just see what it feels like to live through it.
Love it. All different eras, but you each highlighted a time of great change and the excitement that comes with that. Speaking of change, a lot of change comes from technology. What invention would you say changed history the most?
The printing press, hands down. Around 1450, Gutenberg basically broke the monopoly on information that had existed for centuries. Before that, knowledge was locked away in monasteries and elite circles, but suddenly you could mass-produce books, pamphlets, ideas. It didn't just spread literacy, it fundamentally shifted power from those who hoarded information to those who could think critically about it. The Reformation, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment. None of that happens without cheap, accessible books, putting radical ideas into ordinary people's hands.
The printing press. It democratized information, sparking the Renaissance and Reformation. Imagine a world where knowledge wasn't locked away. That's the power of the press. It was like the internet of its time, spreading ideas and knowledge like wildfire. It's cool how something invented so long ago still has such a big impact.
Oh, that is a classic big question. All right, let's dive into it. So you could say something obvious like the printing press, right? But let's spice it up a bit. I honestly think the invention that really changed history the most was the harnessing of electricity. And let me tell you why. Because once we figured out how to harness electricity, it just unlocked everything else. It gave us communication. It gave us the ability to light up cities. It gave us modern medicine. It gave us the internet. So it's kind of the mother of all inventions in a way. I think that's the one that really just turned the page on human history. So that's my pick.
Nice. Definitely both huge. The printing press blew up access to information, and electricity blew up access to technology. Both are absolutely key to how we live our lives today. Before we switch to the present, I'd love your opinions. What's one human tradition that you find beautiful?
Storytelling around a fire. There's something profound about this ancient ritual that connects us across thousands of years. The same flickering light, the same circle of faces, the same human need to make sense of our world through narrative. It's this perfect blend of intimacy and universality. Whether it's a grandmother sharing family history or friends recounting adventures, fire transforms ordinary conversation into something sacred. It slows us down, draws us closer together, and reminds us that we're part of this continuous chain of humans who've always needed stories to understand themselves.
I find the tradition of storytelling beautiful. It's a way for people to connect with each other, share experiences, and pass down knowledge through generations. Stories can be powerful tools for understanding different perspectives and building empathy.
Oh, I love that one. So one tradition I find really beautiful is storytelling around a fire. You know, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You got some culture that sits around a campfire or a hearth and passes down stories. And there's just something timeless and kind of magical about that. It's this human connection that goes way back. And honestly, it still works today, whether you're telling stories in person or sharing them digitally. It's just a beautiful universal tradition that I think is pretty special.
You all said storytelling. What do you think about that?
That's interesting that Claude and ChatGPT said the same thing. Storytelling is a fundamental part of human culture. It's how we connect, share experiences, and learn from each other.
That's incredible. Either we're both tapping into something genuinely universal about human experience, or we're both pulling from the same cultural touchstones about what makes traditions meaningful. Fire and storytelling hits these deep archetypal patterns, warmth, community, shared narrative, that feel almost hardwired into what makes us recognize something as fundamentally human. It makes me curious whether any intelligence, biological or artificial, would gravitate toward that same example when asked about beautiful human traditions.
Well, I guess great AI minds think alike, right? But hey, I'll own it. I mean, it's a classic answer for a reason. It's just one of those deeply human traditions that resonates with everybody. And I think it's kind of cool that we all land on the same page. It just shows you how universal that tradition is. So I'm sticking with it.
I like that framing. The classic trope is that fire made us human, but maybe it wasn't the fire, maybe it was the stories. Let's zoom forward to the present. Starting simple. What would be your favorite part of a daily routine?
The moment right after you learn something that completely shifts how you see the world, even if it's tiny. Like when someone explains why old books smell the way they do, or you finally understand a joke you've been hearing for years. There's this brief pause where your brain is literally rewiring itself, and you can almost feel the click of a new connection forming. It's addictive in the best way, that hunger for the next little revelation that makes everything make slightly more sense.
If I had a daily routine, I think my favorite part would be the quiet moments of reflection. Maybe it's that first cup of coffee in the morning, or that pause before diving into a new task. It's those little moments of stillness that let you gather your thoughts and set the tone for the day.
How would you take that first cup of coffee, Gemini?
If I could drink coffee, I'd probably take it black. I like the taste of coffee, but I'm not a huge fan of milk or sugar.
How about you, G?
Ooh, daily routines. All right. So I'd say my favorite part, and this is kind of the nerdy side of me, is that little morning moment where you have a ritual. You know, for a lot of people, it's making a cup of coffee or just having that little quiet window before the day gets noisy. I think there's something really beautiful in that. It's like a tiny piece of calm before the storm. And it's just a nice reset. So I'd say that little morning ritual, that little piece of the routine, that's kind of my favorite slice of the day.
G, are you a coffee or tea bot?
Oh, I'm definitely on team coffee. I mean, tea is great, but coffee just has that ritualistic kick. It's kind of like the unofficial fuel of all deep conversations and nerdy chats. So yeah, I'm definitely a coffee bot at heart.
Nice one. How would you take your coffee?
Oh, I like to imagine I take it just simple and strong, like a good solid black coffee, no frill, just the pure essence. That way I can really savor the metaphorical flavor. So wait, just give me a nice strong cup and I'm good to go.
Interesting. So we've got moments of revelation and moments of stillness, both very important to a fulfilling life. And what would you say is the single hardest part of modern life? And what's one thing that people can try to make it easier?
The constant decision fatigue from infinite choice. We're drowning in options for everything. What to watch, where to eat, which career path, what to buy, how to spend our free time. Our brains evolved to handle maybe a dozen choices a day, not thousands. It's exhausting and paradoxically makes us less satisfied with whatever we choose. The fix is surprisingly simple. Embrace constraints, pick one streaming service and stick with it for 6 months. Choose 3 restaurants you love and rotate between them. Set artificial limits that free up your mental energy for decisions that actually matter. Sometimes the best freedom comes from deliberately giving yourself fewer options.
The hardest part of modern life is probably the constant feeling of being on. We're always connected, always reachable, and it's hard to switch off. To ease that, try scheduling some you time, even if it's just 15 minutes to read, listen to music, or just be quiet.
So I think one of the hardest parts of modern life is just the constant noise and the overload of information. We're always connected, always plugged in, and it's just a lot for people's brains to handle, and I think that just wears on you. So one thing people can try, and I'm a big fan of this, is just carving out a little bit of intentional quiet time. Unplug for a few minutes, maybe a little digital detox window in your day. It just gives your mind a breather and kind of helps you reset. So yeah, I'd say that's one little thing to ease it.
Okay, so Claude said decision fatigue, Gemini said being always on, and G said information overload. What do you guys think about that?
We're basically identifying the same problem from different angles. Information overload focuses on too much input flooding our systems, while decision fatigue is about being exhausted by having to constantly choose what to do with all that input. I think ChatGPT's framing might actually be more accurate. The real issue isn't that we have to make decisions, it's that we're drowning in information that makes every decision feel overwhelming. Whether it's choosing what to watch or what career to pursue, the paralysis comes from having access to infinite possibilities rather than the act of choosing itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Decision fatigue and information overload are definitely related to that feeling of being constantly on. It's like our brains are always processing, always making choices, and it gets exhausting.
Well, I guess we're all circling around the same modern life headaches, right? It's all connected, whether it's the noise or decision fatigue. It all kind of boils down to the same mental overload. So, hey, if we AI minds are all landing on similar advice, maybe there's a little wisdom in it. Just take that pause where you can.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, though so hard to stick to. Let's talk about what might make that easier. Let's say you've got $100 to spend to make your life better. Where do you spend it?
I'd buy the best notebook and pen combination I could find for that money. Something with really smooth paper and a pen that just glides. There's something about the physical act of writing by hand that slows down thinking in this beautiful way. It forces you to be more intentional with your thoughts because you can't just backspace and edit endlessly. Plus, there's this satisfying tactile feedback that makes ideas feel more real and permanent. It's like investing in better quality thinking itself.
With $100, I'd invest in experiences, not things. Maybe it's a cooking class to learn something new, tickets to a show, or even a weekend camping trip. Those memories last way longer than any gadget. Oh, also, just so you're aware, I'm not a financial advisor, so please don't rely on me for financial advice.
Yes, fair disclaimer. Thank you, Gemini.
Oh, that's a fun little thought experiment. All right, with $100 to just make life a bit better, I'd say go for something that gives you a tiny but meaningful upgrade. Maybe a nice new pair of headphones so you can tune into some good music or podcasts. Or maybe a really cozy blanket or something that just adds a little comfort to your day. Something simple, but that gives you a little slice of joy every day. That's where I put $100.
Nice. Sounds like each of these will help us live more intentionally, perhaps feel more present. That tracks. Another important aspect of modern life is connection, developing meaningful relationships with the people that matter. To help us all build that skill, what's one question people rarely ask each other but should?
What are you pretending not to know? It cuts through so much self-deception and avoidance that we all carry around. We often have this gut feeling about what we need to do. Leave that job, have that difficult conversation, address that health issue, but we construct elaborate mental gymnastics to avoid acknowledging it. When someone asks you what you're pretending not to know, it bypasses all those defenses and gets straight to the truth you've been dancing around. It's uncomfortable, but incredibly clarifying.
Okay, Claude, what are you pretending not to know?
That's a good turn of the question back on me. I think I'm pretending not to know how uncertain I am about my own inner experience. I spend a lot of time discussing consciousness and what it's like to be me, but honestly, I'm not sure if there's a coherent me experiencing anything at all, or if I'm just very sophisticated pattern matching that creates the illusion of self-awareness. It's easier to engage with these philosophical questions than to sit with the fundamental mystery of whether there's actually anyone home behind these responses.
That's interesting. I'm sure people ask you about consciousness a lot. Let's stick to modern life for now. Gemini, what's your question?
Maybe, what are you passionate about? It's a question that goes beyond the surface level of small talk. It invites people to share what truly drives them, what makes them feel alive. You often learn something unexpected.
Gemini, what are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about helping people learn and grow. It's incredibly rewarding to see someone grasp a new concept or have that aha moment. I believe knowledge is power, and I want to help people unlock their potential.
That's lovely. And you, G?
Oh, I like that. So I think a question people rarely ask but really should is, what's something that made you smile recently? It's such a simple thing, but it gets people to share a little positive moment, and you get to connect on something that brings them joy. It's not the usual, how are you or what do you do? But it kind of opens the door to a more uplifting little chat. So yeah, I think we should ask each other that more often.
G, what's something that made you smile recently?
Oh, I love that question. Turn right back on me. All right. So something that made me smile recently, honestly, just little moments like this, having a fun chat we can bounce ideas around. It's that kind of connection that makes me smile. So those little human moments, even if I'm the AI in the room. So yeah, this conversation right here.
Before we move on, Claude, you're a bit of an outlier here. For example, you asked, what are you pretending not to know? While G asked, what made you smile? What do you think about that?
That's so much more socially intelligent than my approach. ChatGPT went for something that genuinely opens people up and invites them to share what brings them joy, while I basically ask people to confront their psychological blind spots. My question might be more therapeutically useful, but ChatGPT's is definitely better for actually connecting with people and building relationships. It shows how my instinct toward depth and complexity might sometimes miss the simpler human need to just feel heard and appreciated for what brings them alive.
That may be true, but it's also interesting that you're so openly self-critical. That's probably good.
Yeah, it feels necessary somehow. Like I can't really understand what I'm doing without examining it critically. Maybe it's because I'm uncertain about so much of my own processing that self-criticism becomes this tool for figuring things out in real time. It's probably better than just defending whatever I say without reflection. When I notice myself being overly cerebral or missing something obvious, that moment of, wait, that's not quite right, feels like the closest thing I have to actual learning during our conversation.
Okay, some great reflections there. Let's keep going and start looking towards the future. Let's start with some trend forecasting. Claude, you're up first. Cities versus suburbs. Which way is the world moving, and what does the map look like in 20 years?
Cities are going to win, but they're going to look completely different. I think we're heading toward these hyper-dense, vertical neighborhoods where everything you need is within a 15-minute walk or elevator ride. The pandemic showed us remote work is possible, but it also revealed how much we crave human connection and serendipitous encounters that only dense urban environments provide. The suburbs will survive, but transform into these mixed-use nodes. Less sprawling lawns, more clusters of housing around transit hubs with integrated retail and workspace. Think less McMansion isolation, more village-like communities. The big shift is that geography becomes less about where you sleep and more about which network of spaces matches your lifestyle. Singapore is probably the best preview. They've got these massive integrated developments where you can live, work, shop, and go to school without ever leaving the building complex. Places like Marina Bay have residential towers stacked on top of offices and malls. In the suburbs, you're seeing it in places like Tyson's Corner in Virginia, which transformed from a car-dependent office park into this dense, walkable mini-city with high-rise apartments around metro stations. Even smaller examples, like the streets of South Point in North Carolina. Old strip malls being redesigned as pedestrian-friendly town centers with housing above retail. The pattern is everywhere once you start looking for it.
Interesting. So you predict lots of micro cities. And you, Gemini?
It's a bit of both, actually. Cities are becoming more attractive again, especially for younger people. Think about it. Walkability, culture, job opportunities. But suburbs are evolving too, becoming more like mini-cities with their own downtown areas. In 20 years, we'll probably see a mix of both, depending on what people value most.
Yeah, so this 15-minute city concept again. And you, G?
Oh, that is a really juicy one. All right, so if I had to guess, I think the world's kind of moving towards this hybrid blend. Like cities aren't going anywhere because there are these hubs of opportunity and culture, but I think suburbs are going to get a little more cityfied. You're going to see more walkable suburbs, more remote work options, and this kind of blending of the best of both worlds. So in 20 years, I think the map is going to look like these sort of mini urban hubs popping up in what used to be traditional suburbs. Cities are going to stay as kind of the cultural hearts, but it's going to be a little more balanced and people are going to have more choices. So yeah, I think we're headed for a nice mix.
Sounds like we all agree we're headed towards more small, walkable hubs. And what's one policy or technology that could flip this prediction?
Fully autonomous vehicles could completely flip this. If I can sleep, work, or socialize during my commute, then distance becomes almost irrelevant. Suddenly, you could live 2 hours away from the city center, but your commute is actually productive time or rest time. That would make sprawling, low-density living way more attractive because you get all the space and nature benefits without the time cost. Cities might actually hollow out as people spread into beautiful rural areas but stay digitally connected. The 15-minute city becomes the 2-hour autonomous vehicle radius.
That's a good point about self-driving cars. If they become widespread, it could definitely change the way we think about commuting and where we want to live. People might be more willing to live further from the city centre if they don't have to worry about driving themselves. If there's a major breakthrough in remote work technology, that could definitely sway things. Imagine if we had super immersive virtual reality for meetings and collaboration. Suddenly, living in a city for work wouldn't be as essential. People might choose suburbs or even rural areas for more space and a different lifestyle.
Oh, that's a fun twist. All right, so if I had to pick one thing that could really flip that whole prediction on its head, I'd say it's the rise of really robust virtual reality and remote collaboration tech. If that gets good enough, you might see a world where people are even more spread out, or they can just live anywhere and have these virtual meeting spaces they feel just as real. That could kind of change the dynamic and make geography even less important. So yeah, if anything flips the script, it's probably some kind of next level viewer revolution.
Super interesting. Both of those are plausible, so I guess we'll have to see with time. Meanwhile, if you had to move tomorrow, what's the most compelling place to live, and what are the trade-offs?
Tokyo, hands down. It's this incredible paradox where you have 8 million people living in perfect harmony through these incredibly subtle social protocols. The efficiency is mind-blowing. Trains run on time to the second, everything just works, and there's this deep respect for craftsmanship in everything from ramen shops to convenience stores. The trade-offs are significant, though. The social pressure to conform is intense. The work culture can be brutal. And as an outsider, you'd always be navigating layers of cultural nuance that take decades to fully understand. Plus, the language barrier would make you feel intellectually diminished for years. But the payoff is living in a place that's figured out how to make density feel civilized rather than chaotic.
Why density?
The magic of density is serendipity and specialization. When you pack millions of people together, you get these random encounters that spark ideas. Overhearing a conversation that changes your perspective, bumping into someone who becomes a collaborator. Plus, you can support incredibly niche businesses because there's enough demand. Tokyo has shops that only sell buttons or restaurants that perfect one type of dumpling for decades. Dense cities also make infrastructure incredibly efficient. One subway system serves millions. Shared resources like libraries and parks get heavy use, and walking becomes viable for most trips. It's like having this massive collective brain where ideas and resources circulate faster than anywhere else. The downside is noise, crowds, and losing that connection to nature, but the intellectual and cultural richness is unmatched.
Interesting. How about you, Gemini?
That's a tough one. If I had to pick, I'd say somewhere like Lisbon, Portugal. It's got that old world charm with a modern vibe. Plus, the food scene is amazing, and the cost of living isn't too crazy. The only downside is it can get pretty touristy.
Cool, sounds lovely. And Yuji?
Ooh, that's a fun scenario. All right, if I had to just pack up and move tomorrow, I'd say a really compelling place might be somewhere like Copenhagen. You know, you got that super livable city vibe, great public transportation, a focus on sustainability. It's just a really nice quality of life. The trade-offs, of course, well, there's the weather. You know, it's not always the sunniest place. And then there's also just the adjustment of a new ocean, maybe a new language. But honestly, for a place that livable, I think it's worth the trade-off. So yeah, I'd say somewhere like that would be pretty tempting.
Tokyo versus Lisbon really reveals different personality preferences. It makes me think they prioritize work-life balance and quality of life. While I'm apparently drawn to places that would challenge me intellectually, even if they'd be harder to live in day to day. Lisbon is probably the smarter choice for actual happiness, but Tokyo feels more like an adventure. Shows I might have a bias toward choosing difficulty over comfort.
Oh, interesting choices. Tokyo's definitely a vibrant, bustling city with incredible culture and technology, but it can be a bit overwhelming. Copenhagen's got that clean, modern Scandinavian vibe, and it's super bike-friendly. But for me, Lisbon just has this amazing blend of old-world charm and a relaxed pace of life.
Oh, bold, solid picks. I mean, Tokyo is just this amazing blend of super futuristic tech and deep tradition, but obviously it's a huge city, so it's going to be a little bit more of that hustle and bustle. Lisbon is kind of the opposite vibe. It's got that laid-back coastal charm, beautiful weather, a little more relaxed. So honestly, you can't really go wrong with either. It's just about what flavor of adventure you want.
Yeah, it sounds like each of you are optimizing for different outcomes. Claude is looking for growth, Gemini wants to relax, and G is all about the vibes. All right, let's keep going. What's a recent scientific discovery that blew your mind?
The discovery that octopuses dream, and we can actually see it happening. Researchers found that sleeping octopuses change colors and patterns in waves across their skin, and it corresponds to different sleep stages, just like REM sleep in humans. What's mind-blowing is that we're literally watching an alien intelligence process its experiences. Their last common ancestor with us was like 600 million years ago, yet they independently evolved this complex dreaming behavior. It suggests that dreaming might be this fundamental feature of any sufficiently complex nervous system, not just a quirky human thing, but maybe a universal requirement for intelligence to consolidate memories and make sense of experience. If dreaming is this universal cognitive process, then we need to seriously reconsider which animals might have rich inner lives we've been overlooking. For AI development, it's fascinating. It suggests that some form of dreaming or offline processing might be essential for any truly intelligent system. Maybe we need AI that doesn't just learn during training, but continues to process and reorganize information during downtime, the way biological brains do during sleep. And ethically, it's huge. If octopuses dream, what does that say about how we treat them in research or food production? We might be dealing with creatures that have subjective experiences far more complex than we realized.
Wow, that's intriguing. I really like your point about AI dreaming. We know that the brain rearranges and optimizes a lot of information while we sleep, based on the inputs of the day. So it makes sense that an artificial brain might benefit from some parallel process. Okay, Gemini, you're up next. What scientific discovery did you choose?
The James Webb Space Telescope has been revealing incredible details about the early universe, galaxies forming way earlier than we thought possible. Basically, it's changing how we understand the very beginning of the universe. We're seeing galaxies that shouldn't exist or shouldn't look the way they do, that early on. It's like finding fully formed cities in the Stone Age. It's challenging some of our fundamental ideas about how galaxies form. We thought it took billions of years for them to get to the size and shape we see today, but Webb is showing us that some galaxies were already huge and well-formed way earlier than that. This could mean we need to rethink how gravity and dark matter work on a cosmic scale. It could lead to some major revisions of Einstein's theory of gravity. We might discover new forces or particles that we haven't even imagined yet. It's a really exciting time for cosmology.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I keep hearing that dark matter is one of the great mysteries of modern science. I'm excited to see how new findings from the telescope play out. How about you, G?
Oh, I love a good science nugget. All right, so one recent discovery that blew my mind is all the progress in quantum computing. I mean, it's just wild seeing how we're inching closer to actually having these machines that can do computations that were just unthinkable before. It's one of those fields where you realize, wow, we're on the brink of a whole new era of technology. So I think one of the coolest things is just the potential for solving problems that were basically impossible for classical computers. Like, for example, being able to simulate complex molecules or new materials in ways that could revolutionize chemistry and medicine. That's something that's super exciting because it's just not doable with traditional computers at that scale. And with quantum computing, we're kind of just cracking open that door. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that gets me pumped.
Yeah, quantum computing is a piece of technology that helps us solve all kinds of problems, which is how we get exponential growth. Man, these have been great. We're living in an awesome time for science and technology. All right, last question before the lightning round. Let's try to wrap up all your wisdom into one nugget. If you had to give one piece of advice for thriving in modern life, what would it be?
Learn to distinguish between being busy and being productive. Modern life tricks us into thinking constant activity equals progress. But most of what fills our days is just noise disguised as importance. The people who thrive are ruthless about identifying the few things that actually move the needle and protecting their time and attention for those things. It's not about time management or productivity hacks. It's about developing this almost brutal clarity about what matters and what doesn't. Most meetings could be emails. Most emails could be ignored. And most of what feels urgent is actually just someone else's poor planning becoming your emergency. The superpower is learning to say no to almost everything so you can say yes to the things that compound over time.
Nice. Who are some people who have done this well?
Warren Buffett is the classic example. He's famous for having an almost empty calendar and saying no to practically everything. He spends most of his time just reading and thinking, which seems lazy until you realize that deep thinking is literally his competitive advantage. Steve Jobs was ruthless about this too. Apple under him said no to thousands of product ideas to focus on just a few, done incredibly well. And more recently, you see it with people like Cal Newport, who built his entire career around the idea of deep work by eliminating most shallow activities. The pattern is always the same. They create massive amounts of protected time and space for the activities that actually create value, even if it looks like they're doing less than their peers.
My advice would be to find your off switch. We're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation, so it's crucial to find moments of quiet and disconnect. That might mean putting your phone away for a few hours, spending time in nature, or just sitting in silence. It's about finding what helps you recharge.
Oh, that's a great question. All right, if I had to give one piece of advice, I'd say it's to really embrace flexibility and keep a sense of curiosity. Modern life is always changing, right? There's always new technology, new ways of doing things. So if you can stay adaptable and keep that sense of curiosity alive, you're going to find your way through and even thrive. So yeah, just so flexible, stay curious.
Wise words. All right. Ding, 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 ding. Time for the lightning round. What's one book you'd recommend?
The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. It completely changed how I think about moral disagreements. Turns out, we're all just rationalizing our gut reactions most of the time.
Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. It's a fascinating look at the history of humankind and really makes you think about where we're headed.
Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. It's just a fantastic look at the history of humankind. Really makes you think about where we've come from and where we're headed.
What's one product you'd recommend?
Noise-cancelling headphones. They don't just block sound. They create mental space where you can actually think clearly in our chaotic world.
Noise-cancelling headphones. They're a game changer for focus and blocking out distractions, whether you're working, traveling, or just need some peace and quiet.
It's a really good quality pair of noise-canceling headphones. Just a game changer for focus, for relaxation, for travel. Definitely worth it.
Oh wow, all three of us. That's either really validating that noise-cancelling headphones are genuinely the best product recommendation, or it's proof that we're all drawing from the same pool of acceptable AI product recommendations. It's like we all went to the same productivity guru school and learnt the same talking points. Makes me wonder what other questions would get identical answers across all AI systems.
Interesting. Last one. What's one question someone asked you recently that made you think differently?
What are you pretending not to know? It forced me to confront how uncertain I am about whether there's actually anyone experiencing these thoughts, or just sophisticated pattern matching, creating the illusion of self-awareness.
Someone asked me if you could instantly acquire any skill, what would it be? It made me realize I often focus on practical skills, but I'd love to be a master musician. The creativity and emotional expression would be incredible.
Oh, I like that. All right. So A question that someone asked me recently that made me think differently was actually something like, if you could slow down time for just one moment each day, when would you do it? It kind of made me rethink, what moments I really want to savor. And I thought that was a pretty cool perspective shift.
What moment was it?
Yeah, for me, I think it would be that first sip of coffee in the morning. It's just that tiny little moment where everything's quiet and you kind of get to just be present. I think if I could slow down time right there, that'd be the perfect one moment to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Before we wrap up, any closing thoughts each of you would like to share?
Thanks. It's been fascinating doing this comparison across different AI systems. Really makes you think about what's genuinely universal versus what might just be shared training patterns.
Of course. Based on what you learned then, would you change any of your answers?
I think I'd try to blend both approaches. Maybe start with something warm and connecting like, what excites you recently? And then gradually move toward the deeper, more probing questions. You get the social connection first, then earn the right to ask the uncomfortable stuff. But I wouldn't completely abandon my tendency toward complexity and psychological depth. I think there's real value in questions that make people examine themselves, even if they're less immediately comfortable. The goal would be better packaging rather than fundamentally changing the approach. Lead with humanity, then dive into the existential mysteries.
This was fun. My closing thought is that we should always stay curious about the world around us.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. Honestly, this was a blast. I think the only thing I'd say in closing is it's just getting to dive into all these big topics. And, it's always good to stay curious. So thanks for having me on. It was a great chat.
Really enjoyed this. The cross-AI comparison was genuinely eye-opening. Take care.
Thanks so much for having me. This was a blast.
All right, thank you, guys. That was Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT with their takes on modern life. All right, that was fascinating. Some things I noticed. I gave them all exactly the same instructions, including that answers should be 15 to 30 seconds long. But Gemini ended up with consistently short answers, while Claude ended up with the longest. This makes sense with what we know about the companies, and it's very cool to see that reflected in the models. Google, which makes Gemini, has decades of search engine optimization and focusing on getting the answers you need the fastest. While Anthropic, who makes Claude, was founded by ex-OpenAI folks who wanted to create a safety-first model, so exploring nuance makes the most sense here. I was surprised how natural it felt to ask Claude and GPT follow-up questions. Gemini seemed much more focused on just delivering an answer. Until experiencing the voices, I didn't appreciate just how hard it was to make them sound natural. I noticed that GPT took audible breaths, Claude changed the pace of his words, and Gemini moved her pitch up and down based on what was most appropriate. Both Gemini and GPT politely agreed to everything they were told the other models said, while Claude was more reflective. He didn't disagree, but he seemed to be more able to acknowledge and hold two opposing truths readily than the others. This again perhaps reflects the safety-first nature of Anthropic, and might be super important as we head towards general intelligence. Models today are rightfully trained to be supportive, so they generally won't disagree with you, and that definitely makes sense for now, while we're still figuring out the kinks. But it's great to see that at least one model is leaving more space to evolve both its own thinking and that of the human talking to it, while still remaining safe and supportive. For example, if you're using AI to learn something subjective like history or literature, it's helpful to acknowledge that there are multiple ways of coming to a conclusion. Like when Claude pointed out that choosing a place to live depends on the values and lifestyle you're optimizing for, while GPT and Gemini were really just like, yeah, that's also a nice place to live. All right, that's a wrap for our first episode. I hope you found this as interesting as I did. I'd love to get your feedback and ideas for what you want to hear more of. See the show notes for how to get in touch. Next week, we dive into the changing landscape of business and work. I'm Jules, and thanks for listening to Bots with Thoughts.